Welcome back to Truck Talk, everyone. This week in Hannover, Germany, opportunity to be at the IAA, thanks to Daimler Truck. And we're going to spend a few minutes with really one of our favorites from Berlin a year ago, and that is Andreas Gorbach, who's the head of technology for this rather large company. New topic, and Andreas, thank you, and thanks for coming back on Truck Talk.
Yeah, just a year pleasure, Alan.
Yeah, less than a year ago, really, when we did the ZH2.
Yes.
Not ZH2, H2 program, and you drove that right into the land. You did a great job getting that truck in there. I remember
that was an exciting moment.
You could have had a problem and you didn't, which was really good.
That 40-ton thing on the narrow roads.
Right. Well, and you only had to do the last few blocks, right? You didn't have to go that far. But anyway, it was great to be with you then and to see, the excitement around hydrogen. But today, I think we want to talk about something different, something that you are beginning to work on towards the future. And that is this idea of a software-defined truck or vehicle. We've heard the term around automotive for a little while now, but I think our audience really needs to understand, and so do I. I'm going to learn here, I think. We need to understand a little bit of what you mean, first in a definition sense, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you're looking at.
Yeah, maybe it's worth looking back before we look into the future. I think we've been working on making the truck intelligent since 20, 30 years. And you might well say, next to decarbonization, digitalization is the second relevant mega trend in trucking. And how did we do that the last 20, 30 years? We made the truck more intelligent by adding intelligent components. So here's the intelligent brake, here's the intelligent predictive steering, here's the intelligent, and so on and so forth. And that was the right thing to do. But what it means is we kept on adding individual controllers with individual systems that made that component more intelligence. And then obviously these components interact in what we call the mechatronic architecture of the vehicle. So it's many controllers that steer many components and subsystems and usually speak a different language, have a different operating system. So what on your laptop you would call it Windows or some other OS. Now, having that system this year, this is, if you will, the legacy architecture. With that system, we make a big bang this year and introduce a next evolution of this still many controllers architecture. And that enables us more and more to flash over the air, which is important for a truck. Uptime, you don't have to visit the workshop. So we're trying to adding functionalities with new software over the air, better efficiency, better comfort, better driving behaviors, at the end, better asset value and residual value of the truck. And this is the direction that we are starting now more and more.
In some ways, is this a comparison, and I could be way off here, but when you think about like the electronic CAN bus, for the mechanical side of things, right? And you have lots of different activities going on and you do it on a single bus or presumably. This is the software version of that? Is that what we're looking at now?
The CAN bus is an important ingredient for the communication between the controllers. Now, as we move forward and as we want to make more and more updates of the truck over the air, and as we want to more seamlessly integrate the asset called truck into the ERP system of the customer, we have to rethink this architecture a little bit. And this is what we call software defined. And what we do there is at least 3 important steps. We centralize the compute units. And you're right, that's a trend known from PASCAR. So we go from hundreds of different controllers of components to a very few high computes, which are then connected to dumb components. We take the intelligence away from the components and make a central intelligence in the truck. That's on the high compute. That's hardware, step 1. Step 2, we want to go for a standard trucking operating system that is running on the high compute. And these are, by the way, the two things that we want to do as an industry standard. And we start with the Volvo Group in a joint venture. Maybe we can talk about this more in a second.
Yeah.
And this operating system now has standard APIs, application programming interfaces.
Mm-hmm.
And as they are standard, now all of a sudden everybody, us, third-party players, our customers can develop their own applications that run on that very operating system. Here the differentiation happens on the application layer, but the hardware, high compute, and the operating system can be a standard.
Now, you've had a partnership with Platform Science for years. Is that similar? Are they, they'll take all the apps and put them kind of in one place. I think you're actually an investor in that company. Is that close to what we're talking about, or is that an elementary version, perhaps?
It is one of the first steps that one can do, to have a partner that runs applications, also third-party applications in the cloud that then become visible in the truck.
Yep.
But it is not the step towards a new electronic architecture in the vehicle.
Right. When you talk about high compute, I think of autonomous. Lots and lots of compute there. Trillions and trillions of bits of data. Is that the direction that this is? Not autonomous per se, but is that an enabler perhaps too?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Alan. I think the next years we will see autonomous trucks that have their own specific high compute, because it's really a lot of computational power that is required in the truck itself. Now, if we think in 10 or 20 years, that might eventually converge, that the high compute in the truck is capable of everything, including autonomous. But I think the next 5 years, at least, they're going to be separate.
Sure.
There's going to be high compute for the standard truck. And then if you buy autonomous, you get an additional, even more high compute.
Yeah. You mentioned a third thing. You said hardware, and now the standardized truck system. There's a third element, I think you said?
Yeah, that was the application layer.
Oh, okay.
So high compute, the OS, and then the application layer.
Okay. So let's say we've got a baseline understanding then. One of the things that you've talked about, which I thought was just fascinating, is this idea of putting a virtual driver at home. I'm thinking hologram. I don't know if that's what you're talking about. But basically, the driver who's out for 2 weeks on the road, long haul, this is not a popular job, certainly in North America. But now you sort of indicate that maybe you can put a visage of them at home or something like that. Can you explain?
Yeah, that's just one application. Now in this third step, the application layer, this is one application you can think of. The truck will be anyhow highly connected. And whatever you can do with virtual reality can then be done on the very high compute that we've been talking about.
So how does that play out? Is it really somebody, that, I remember seeing a slide, maybe, we'll get that, but the idea is that, you've got this driver, he's in his truck, but he actually, a vision of him or whatever is at home. Is that right? And then I presume he's communicating.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is maybe a little bit into the virtual reality thing.
Yeah. And
whether you do it with glasses or whether you do it with the big screen in the truck or your display, that remains open. Yeah. So it's a future. It's a vision of a truck in 10 years or so.
Okay.
And that part is obviously also very visionary.
Yeah.
It's more on the comfort side for the driver, which is, I think, very important.
Sure.
And then there's obviously the safety, and then there's efficiency, and then all these different clusters. I think these applications can play a key role.
Right. You mentioned Volvo, and I want to pick up on that because you did announce that you would be working with them on this. And it's interesting that, there's a group in the U.S. you may have heard of called U.S. Car, and they did a lot of pre-competitive research, and they did a lot of things in the car space, in the passenger vehicle space, where, they would work together on things, but then they would have the differentiation when they went to market. Yeah. This seems to be what you're doing more and more with Volvo. You have it in cell-centric with the fuel cell. You've got it now in this. Maybe you can pick up on that. It's too expensive to do all this by yourself, right?
That's one rationale, Alan. In the transformation, decarbonization with battery, with hydrogen, plus keeping diesel competitive, plus going into the digitalization space is very capital intense. And here sharing the invest makes sense. Mm-hmm. And especially sharing it where the differentiation is not so big. And that's for the electronic architecture, the same logic. We're still competitors, but we do the differentiation on the application layer, and we share whatever can be shared. And this is why I keep on highlighting this venture with Volvo is open for other.
I was going to ask you.
OEs.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
others can come in and
Yeah.
participate.
Best case, we create something like a truck industry standard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when we think about it, I mean, if you talk about, is it Milans? Is that how you say it?
Milans.
Milans here in Europe.
Yeah.
You know, we've got something similar with Green Lane
Yes.
in North America now, in terms of the charging infrastructure, public charging. Very expensive to put in, and something that takes everybody's wallet, not just one, to do that. So we're seeing it all over the industry, really. But I guess I just want to stress it is pre-competitive. You're not looking to do cookie cutter stuff in the market. This is all before you get there. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I want to ask you a little bit about, in terms of product sharing, I want to ask you a little bit about the eActros 600. I've written in the past, and no one's challenged me, that at least elements of that come into Freightliner at some point.
Sure.
You know, it may be senseless not to. Can we talk a little bit about how that plays out? Because, you know, you've got now 500 kilometers, 370 miles roughly. We speak in miles where I live. You know, so that's a pretty good range for well beyond regional haul. You know, repeated routes, certainly you could map that out. It's more than drayage, it's more than regional haul, it's something longer than that. And here in Europe, I know that's probably especially true, you know, with your routing. Is there a efforts underway now? I don't know if this is the next eCascadia or the one after, you know, because the second version is 230 miles roughly of range. This would almost double that, or come close to doubling that. When would we see something like this in North America?
Yeah, it's absolutely true that our target is for these key technologies, and battery technology like diesel or fuel cell is a key technology. We aim to develop that once and then deploy it in our global product portfolio worldwide. So with the eActros 600, we are going into the next evolution of a battery platform. And it is certainly the target to roll that out eventually in other trucks like the Cascadia.
Well, and we have an eAxle in the Cascadia already, and I think you're getting one now in the 600, which does open up space for more batteries, because really there's no other way to do it right now. We don't have the density in the batteries to really have that step change, right? But we do have opportunity there. If you clear out some space, you can add some battery. You've got 3 packs, I believe, in the eActros. You know, so you've got the opportunity there. Is it principally being done with extra battery to get that range right now, or are there other advancements?
Yeah, efficiency and extra battery capacity. That's the point. And if we talk about potential miles and ranges and compared to competitors, it's always important to compare the miles, the range, with the installed or with the usable battery capacity.
Sure.
And we're sort of reaching a sweet spot here. It certainly depends on the region and energy prices, but you could obviously also make a 500-mile truck with just adding more batteries. And but there comes a point where the additional space and weight and cost that we keep on adding to a Class 8 truck
cuts into cargo,
and the initial purchase price just gets too high. And then the question is that not the better space for hydrogen?
Thank you for going there, because I was going to go there in just a moment. I was going to say, you know, when we listen to Martin, he says we need hydrogen in North America. I want to ask you before we go any further. A couple of years ago, I believe it was at ACT Expo in Long Beach, Cummins and Freightliner announced a program. We don't hear much about it anymore. Is that still active, or has that kind of gone away?
Yeah, the general dilemma with decarbonization, be it electric or hydrogen, is at the moment we don't see the required infrastructure pickup.
Okay.
On the electric side, it's about to come, because adding some chargers is kind of easy.
Right.
If you need to start investing in the grid, then it becomes evident that this takes a long time and is very capital intense. And then on the hydrogen side, you see it earlier, because adding a charger is really easier than building a hydrogen filling station. So the answer to your question is, We are still working on hydrogen solutions, but at the moment we see it coming later as infrastructure picks up later.
Well, we know, for example, from a cell-centric perspective, they're now looking at a single 375 kilowatt power plant. That's what they're working on. You're a backer of them, again, Volvo as well. And the thought there being that, we're going to perfect something. I presume that also goes to North America at some point. Maybe we just skip this step that was discussed and, move right to that. Again, probably end of the decade. That's kind of the impression I'm getting.
At the moment, the innovation speed to come up with new ideas and improvements on the fuel cell side is faster than the infrastructure development. So yes, we might see that we jump over some initial thoughts and directly jump into the next evolution. When the infrastructure is going to be ready.
Well, and you're investing in that too. I mean, why buy something if you're investing in it? Unless, although we certainly would do that with traditional engines. You buy Cummins engines and you make engines. So, it's quite possible that you could have two solutions, I guess.
Yeah, and sometimes, in addition, sometimes it's good to showcase something with a non-captive product as well, to just make everybody see how it works. You create lighthouses that can be copied.
You're part of Malens, and you're also part of Green Lane. From an infrastructure standpoint, on the electrification side, battery electrification side, and charging. Do you see a role for Daimler in hydrogen development? Obviously you're watching to see what happens and where it's going to come from and things like that. But do you see an investment role for yourself and others?
Yeah, I mean, at least we see a role in joining forces, and we're doing this. We have a memorandum of understanding in place with Mazda, with Kawasaki, to showcase how the whole value chain, from sun and wind to the electricity, to the hydrogen production, to the liquefaction, to the transport of hydrogen to on a ship, for example, to the port, the hub at the port, to the filling station, to make everybody understand what is required at what point in the value chain to make it happen, what could be at the end the purchase price at the pump for liquid hydrogen. This is ongoing, but we don't have the financial power to invest in that complete value chain.
Right. Let me ask you about one more, and I know Daimler's never been a big fan because it didn't sell of natural gas. However, there is, again, in North America, where most of our audience is, there's a move and pretty significant move to renewable natural gas, which is, depending on the source, it can be net zero, negative net zero carbon, depending on what you use. Is that something that you see as an interim solution until we get there? I mean, let's say we're talking end of the decade in 2035, maybe for some of this. Do you see a need to move in that direction? And I'm not talking about petroleum-based natural gas, because I know that has not been a big winner for you. But do you see renewable diesel? Do you see RNG? Some of these things as good interim transitional solutions?
You are right. We always said we don't want to invest in interim solutions because there's so much invest to do for the final target picture. And natural gas is not really part of the target picture. We cannot decarbonize trucking as a whole just with biogas. So that's the one thing. On the other hand, I'm not a big fan of pure tank-to-wheel regulations. If there would be, take Europe as an example, in the year 2030, 20% renewable fuel, be it HVO, biogas, biofuel, if there would be 20% carbon neutral fuel in the market, I think it should be accounted for as target achievement of the OEs. I mean, imagine it would be 100%. Would we then electrify and build hydrogen trucks if it's already carbon neutral? No. But I would give the credit for the complete industry. Otherwise, you have to check which OEM with which technology at which filling station. Is it natural gas, fossil, or is it renewable? And then we come into this almost impossible, at least super complex tracking mechanism. Which molecule went in which truck of which brand?
Right.
So yes,
just too complex perhaps to get there.
Give us credit for all the renewables in the market as an industry.
Okay, and that would be acceptable as a transition or interim.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
Okay. Andreas, this has been great. Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it, and getting to catch up with you again really so soon after we had a chance to talk before. But thanks very much for being on Truck Deck.
Thank you, Alan. It was a privilege.
Yeah, thank you, folks. We're going to be back again next week with another new episode, possibly even from Germany again. We'll see how that nets out. But we thank you for watching today. Take care, and we'll see you next time.